Hi everyone, I'm Todd Sepulveda, the editor of Prepper Website and the host of the Prepper Website podcast. Today we're going to talk a little bit about food storage and how important that is. And so I want to start out by getting you to think about how important food is to you. Have you ever gone on a diet and you're gung-ho about losing weight, you're gung-ho about going on a diet, and it's like mental. The minute you start saying that, you start getting hungry. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. That has happened to me plenty of times. Or possibly you're gung-ho about going on a diet. You start, maybe it's Monday, the beginning of the week. You start your diet, and then all of a sudden you're feeling hunger pains like you've never felt hunger pains before, right? And it's like, what in the heck is going on? So food is very, very important to us. Now, we could go, especially those of us that are in the States, could go a lot longer not eating. We have some pounds to shed, at least some of us, right? The majority of us possibly have some pounds that we can shed. But food is very, very important to us. It's very important to our psyche, It's very important to our attitudes. I don't know if you've ever, if you've known someone who gets hangry, right? Who gets angry because they're hungry and their attitude completely changes. I mean, there's videos on that or ads, right? Snickers does that big old ad campaign just on that. But they want to give you a Snickers bar to satisfy you. And in reality, it's, you're hungry. So food is very, very important to us. If you've noticed, a lot of the times our big holidays, whatever they might be, are usually around food. Food is a big deal for us. Now, when it comes to preparedness, we start hearing a whole bunch of information that we need to have our food storage, and rightly so. You do need to have your food storage. You do need to have a stock of food prepared just in case of emergencies. The thing is that you hear so many things out there. It's kind of like, where do you start? And to be honest, there's not a lot of us out there that can go out and spend tons of money on a year's worth of food, right? I mean, you'll hear that. You'll read an article and someone will say you need to have a year's supply of food. And unless you just have bukus of money, you're not going to be able to just throw down a big old check and a lot of money to be able to get some, to be able to bring in a year's supply of food. So where do you start? For those of us who live in the real world, for those of us who have jobs, and those of us who are trying to make ends meet, but we also understand the importance of surviving, and we understand the importance of preparing, and we know that we need to have food. Where do we start? Where do we go? Now, I think the easiest way to start your food storage is to use canned goods. And I'm not talking about the canned goods that that you're using a pressure canner at home and doing. That's great. And if you can do that and you have a big garden and you have meat that you're canning, that's great. I'm talking more along the lines of just buying the regular cans that you buy at the grocery store. I think that is the way to go. And the thing is you want to be very strategic about how you're buying your food and how you're buying your food storage. You don't just want to go to the grocery store and start chunking in a bunch of cans into your grocery cart and then checking out. Not only is it a lot of money, but then you're just throwing in stuff that you might not be able to use. One of the important adages that we hear in food storage all the time in preparedness is eat what you store what you eat, right? Or the other way around, store what you eat what you store. Meaning that whatever you are stocking up on, make sure that it's stuff that your family is going to eat. Make sure it's stuff that you're really going to want to eat if there was an emergency situation. I mean, the worst thing, right, would be that you have, one of the things, if you've ever done like food pantries or whatever, one of the things that people will do is throw in hominy, right? It's kind of like, I've had this can of hominy back in my pantry for years, and now's the perfect time to get rid of it, right? That's not what you want. You want to be able to have food in there that your family, that your kids are going to eat, and that you're going to want to eat. And again, remember, it helps with your attitude. And when things are in a crisis situation, you want everything possible to lift your spirits. Now, I'm not one of those who believes that if you were in a real crisis situation and all you had was a certain type of food, that no one would ever eat it. I was thinking back to the story of my childhood when I would be at home and I would be in the kitchen because I was hungry, right? Or at least I thought I was hungry. And I would walk around the kitchen and I would say, man, there's nothing to eat in here. And my mom would say, hey, there's an apple, there's bananas, there's oranges, whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. Well, and then she would say, well, then you're not really hungry. And I don't know if your parent ever did that to you. My mom did that to me all the time. You're not really hungry. And here's the thing. When I was hungry, there was things that she would cook that I didn't like, but when I was hungry, I would sit down and eat them. And that was the case as well when my wife and I, before I got into education, we ran a group home for kids in CPS custody. And so it was, we did this for 12 years. Kids came into the home and they lived with us permanently, 24/7, right? And a lot of the times these kids were coming from shelters. Sometimes they were coming from the homes that the CPS caseworkers, they picked them up from. But a lot of the times they were coming from shelters and they were coming into our homes. And, in the shelters, they just ate junk. I can't remember a time in all those years when those kids would sit down, because we always ate. We had a big family table. We always ate around the table. We always cooked a big meal. And I can't remember a time where any of the kids ever said, you know what, I don't like that, I'm never going to eat it. What we experienced is kids would come in and they loved the food. They loved to eat. And they would get seconds. In fact, a lot of the kids would wind up gaining weight because they would wind up eating so much. And so I think that really when you are in a situation where when you're hungry and you start to go without just a little bit, that will trigger you to eat some of the things that you don't necessarily like, right? And it'll trigger you. So anyway, that's just my experience. I think in America, we've been very, spoiled on the food that we have. And I think that if we were really, truly hungry, we would eat. But anyway, I've been killing that one. So let's go into the way that you create your food pantry, the way that you create your emergency food storage. Again, store what you eat what you store. And so you are creating a menu, and I think this is very important. I have a link in the comments section to an article that I wrote about Survival for the Common Man, your easy food storage solution. And I have a free download in there where you can kind of create a menu. And so if you were able to sit down and make a menu of all the things that your family likes to eat. But here's the thing. You would have to substitute maybe some of the fresh items or maybe some of the fresh meat that you normally get. You would have to use canned meat. If you were able to do that, could you do that? Could you make a menu at least for 1 week of breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And some of those things might not be canned food. You might be making... You might wind up getting like oatmeal or things like that for breakfast. But the key is to make at least 1 week's worth of a menu. And is this stuff that your kids would eat? And maybe it's something that you need to actually cook for them, and you need to let them experience it and see if they really truly will eat it. And if they do, then you can go ahead and mark that menu item and say, you know what, that is something that I need to go ahead and stock up. And so what you do is you go to the grocery store, and so you have a week's worth of menu items, and then you add to that. So you do 1 more week. And then, you do it again, and you add another week. And a lot of the times you're buying, double, right? So if you're buying for 1 week, you're buying an extra, food item or menu item so that you're just continuing to add to that. So very quickly you can go from 1 week to 2 weeks, and very quickly to a whole month of preparedness items just by using canned food. And so that is the cheapest way. That is the easiest way. That is I think the way that every person who is into emergency preparedness, who is trying to build up their food pantry, I think that is the first thing that you should do. Buying canned food is the easiest, and you can always find canned food on sale, whenever the season is. And so create that menu, make that menu out there, find things that your kids will eat, and then you kind of go from there. I mean, some of the things that we've experimented with, and so this is like chunky soup, right? I know there's a lot of salt in it. I know all that kind of stuff. People are going to be like, hey, Todd, what the heck? But, and I know, it's not totally organic, but we're talking about building an emergency food supply here. And so this is a can of chunky soup. So one of the things that we experimented with in my family was we bought, there's 5 of us here, and I've got boys, and they're big boys. And so we got about 3 cans of chunky soup and something that, like the old-fashioned vegetable beef would work. And then we made a big pot of rice. And so we scooped that rice and then onto a plate or into a bowl, and then put this chunky soup over it. And so you had the kind of like a stew and the rice, and it was a really hearty meal. And so when you start doing things like that, it's really really takes your food storage, expands it and makes it go further, and actually makes you save a lot of money, because you could buy 5 of these cans and 1 for each person. But like I said, 3 cans and then a pot of rice really stretched it out. And you know what? You have some seasonings. Seasonings are important. So putting some Tony's on there, or some pepper and salt, or some hot sauce, whatever makes it better for you, would always work. And so that you can experiment with those types of things, and then you just start adding. So once you find a good solid week's worth of menu of items that your family will eat, then you can start multiplying that. You do another week, do another week, do another week. Sure enough, you have 4 weeks, right? You have a month's worth. And then if you needed to, you can continue to multiply that as you go. Now, that's easy to do. It only takes a little bit of time to sit down and to write out a menu. Be disciplined and do it. And it only takes a little bit of time, but you will very quickly come up with menu items and food storage that everyone will want. So let me talk very briefly about canned goods and just give you a couple of warnings. One of the things about soups like this, right, the chunky soup, is you can see here it's a pop top. Now the pop tops are very, very easy to open. It's one of those things that you're grateful for, and you just pop it up and you're ready to go. The problem with this is the minute that they put this seal here, right, this is a point of failure. So for whatever reason, if this can falls, in the wrong way, and it hits, wrong, it can crack open, and start to leak out. You don't want that. Also, if for whatever reason there is bulging in the can, or there's dent in the can, and somehow the botulism starts to build up in this can, it's a point of failure. Having these pop tops is a point of failure that's very easy for it to just kind of blow up in your pantry. And you do not want that. You do not want a can blowing up filled with botulism in your pantry. That's a big no-no. You'll have to throw everything out and then wipe everything out. And so you definitely don't want that. Does that mean you don't use pop tops? No. You just make sure that you do the first in, first out type thing there. You always make sure, one of the things when I buy cans at the grocery store, I always kind of do this and make sure that there's no dents, right? Because there could always be a dent under the label that you don't see. And so I just make sure that there's no dents there, and you're always checking it. But you're first in, first out. So if this is the back of my pantry and it's here and I have new items, I bring those forward and I put the old or put the new whatever it is, right, the new can behind it. And so I'm always using the oldest one. On the article that I have linked in the show notes or in the comment section, you can see a video. Someone made their own can rotation. So it's really cool. You kind of throw the can up there on the top, and then it kind of comes out, and it's just easy rotating. So you don't have to really think too much about it or move any cans. It does it automatically. You can buy them already made off of Amazon and things like that. So if you're thinking about really, really long storage, you want to get the ones that don't have the pop top, right? And then you always, and if you're ever in an emergency situation and you have an electric can opener, those are the best, right? But you need to have manual can openers, and you should have more than one, because I can tell you how many times I've used a manual can opener and it has failed on me, right? And you just kind of start throwing those away. So find a really good one that that's going to work, but buy a couple of them, because you don't want to be, the last thing you want is to be stuck with a whole bunch of food and then not being able to open it, or going through the ways of opening it, like like you've seen those videos, right? Those hack videos where they open it using the road, right? They're doing it on the side of the road, or you don't want to use a knife or on a hammer or something like that, because there's always that possibility that it's going to slip and cut you. So just have multiple can openers. It just makes a whole lot of sense. So anyway, guys, that is the easiest way to build up your food supply, your food storage, is to have canned goods and to do it that way. And so I hope that you will do that. Hopefully you will continue to do that, because I think that's the place that everybody should start, especially regardless if you're a new prepper or you've been prepping for a while. It just makes a lot of sense. It's very easy. Next week we're going to talk about another type of food storage, so I hope you'll join me for that. So guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to leave a message for me in the comment section, I'm going to come hang out with you here in just a little bit. And so I'd love to see whatever you have to share with me. And so if you're watching on Instagram, thanks so much for hanging out. And guys, we'll see you next week. Peace.